special edition, what are it, 91?
Yes.
Sure. Whatever. We'll fix it in post. Special live, What's on Joe Mind? How's everybody doing?
Where's the theme song?
Again, we'll get it in post.
If anybody comes in, we'll just start from the top.
You guys are so spoiled on live programming, you don't understand. I can add stuff later this way. It'll look better later. Mark will have a skin tone later.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody's ready for that, no. But I'm your host, Mike Irizarry. I know you're used to us every Tuesday night on the YouTubes. We appreciate you. A lot of you have come forward this weekend and introduced yourselves. The rest of you are free to go. This will be disappointing. Again, we've been doing this, me and some form of cast for over 13 years now. We appreciate your support through all that. Joining me here on the big panel today, you recognize him as oftentimes a reflective body of light. But today, he is the former head of marketing for the G.I. Joe brand at Hasbro. It's a hot show, Mark Weber.
I always want to get back to JoeFest and just conventions in general, right? Because as long as there's money in the room, the dealers are happy, and the fans are always happy, surrounded by the things they love. So I dig being at conventions. I'm really glad I got invited back.
And we got cake this convention, so.
Right. What is it? A special shout out.
Right, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Also here on the panel, he has no such credentials as former head of marketing for the G.I. Joe brand. But man, he knows more about comic books. He's forgotten more about comic books than I'll ever know. And he's in on the nepotism angle. It's right time, Rob! We will be doing our lounge duet later, so be sure to stay tuned for that. That's bottom line. So,
Hamilton Joe Frankie Reynolds.
Down on the end, our special guest today, obscured by hat and beard. This is the founder of Jo Declassified. We call him Nomad in the world. We'll refer to him today as Sam, or perhaps S. Sam Samuelson. I don't know if I could say that more than once. I'm happy I got that time. I'm not going to push twice. But Sam is here with us to talk about the history of Jo Declassified. So, since we got started a little late, let's just get right into that. Let's not do our normal screwing around opening segment, because we kind of did that just waiting for everybody else to clear it out. So, Sam, now Jo Declassified, S.M. Samuelson. Jo Declassified is an entity that goes back, like, it's even older than this show, which is hard to imagine having done this show weekly for so long. I feel like I'm 126. So take us back to the early days. What was your impetus for starting Jo Declassified? What spurred you on to bring this together, make that happen?
Yeah, so is there anybody in the room that doesn't know what Jo Declassified is? No, everybody's on board. Awesome.
Give everybody the nickel tour anyway.
Yeah,
for the folks watching on YouTube later.
So Jo Declassified is a registered 501c3 non-for-profit. We show up to Joe shows, not just JoeFest. We do Assembly Required. We've done stuff at CoilCon. We've done we did the Joe Convention back in the day. A lot of shows. The whole idea behind it was to have something done by community members for the community. And so then back to your question, where did it come from? Many years ago, so back in 2006, we were at a convention, and everybody, if you've been in the Joe community a long time, you remember the G.I. Joe Collectors Club. And one of the things that bothered me at the time, and this has nothing to do with the people involved in it, but it didn't feel very much like a club, right? We didn't have a lot of say in where things were going. And we knew that those guys had a lot of acts. The guys that were involved in it, they'd been in the community far longer than us in some cases, right? So they had access to people that work in the brand. They had behind the scenes peek at things. And we would go to the shows, and you're paying all of these money to get to the shows, and you're like, oh man, and those guys would talk about it, but you would never get to see it. So a whole bunch of us got together, And that was kind of like a gripe we had, like, man, that'd be cool to see if only the guys that had it, you know, would share. Felt like there was this iron curtain. So one of my buddies and I, Darren, we went off to lunch, and we basically came up with the same idea, and we pitched each other at lunch. Like, we know a ton of collectors that have access to pre-production material, that have real intimate knowledge on foreign figures, that really know the history of the brand, or know people that were associated with the creation of the brand back in the 80s. We can do this, right? We can just do this ourselves. So the following year, I put out a call to like the closest circle of friends I knew. We bought a booth at Con, and away we went. We just, I mean, it was, you know, compared to now, it was like a horrible looking, you know, display booth of essentially what is then like the traveling museum. We printed up these super cheap magazines. You know, we got them done glass second on some spiral bound paper. Black and white copies was all we could afford at the time, because it was all, everything was all donation based. And
we had them delivered in covered wagons.
Yeah, I mean, just about, that's what it felt like, right? Pterodactyls screaming in.
Right, just fighting them off with our torches.
Yes. So that was kind of the genesis for how it started and came to be, and then we rolled from there. You know, leveraging those contacts we had, or really kind of semi-professionalize whether it was the magazines we were doing or the podcast we had for a while, or the booth and its locations, or the panels that we've done. And then, you know, we even had a forum for a while. Somehow birthed this podcast.
I think that's
generated.
Where it came from. That's actually before my time.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
But,
so there's your story behind it.
And continues to exist entirely on donations at this point, and self generated income.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we probably bring in about $50 to $100 in donations a year, so it's not exactly, you know. So we come out of pocket to bring everything out and show it. Because the cool thing is, like, everybody asks how our booth was like last night. I'll tell you, the first night of the show, our booth is always dead, because everybody's in the show to like rush to toys and spend money. What we do is we get you when you're out of money. Right. Everybody's like, oh, I'm out of money. What am I going to do besides walk on the floor? Oh, I should go learn something. So we set our booth up.
Go visit the stuff that no one can buy, and that makes you feel better about having run out of money.
Yes.
Just again, for the folks that maybe haven't seen the whole floor, where are you at this year?
So, God, I can't remember the booth numbers off the top, but if you go downstairs, we're just kind of in this back left corner here, right next to Carson's huge 3D Joe's spread.
All right. Mark, you got something?
I mean, how do you rotate what you bring? Where does it go? Is there a consumer versus results? Is there a showcase item?
No. So essentially, regardless of where we go, it depends on who's showing up. So one of the things about Declassified is that there is like a core staff that runs it, but it was never about just being those people, right? Talked earlier, right? It was meant to be more of an umbrella. So we've had people that we didn't ever know come up to sit at the booth before and be like, hey man, I'm really into foreign stuff. Are you guys going to do a foreign thing next year? I'll bring some of my stuff. Yeah, we'll give you space in the booth, right? And we've got several folks now that are regular contributors to the booth that 4 or 5 years ago, I never knew who they were, right? They just came up and introduced themselves. And then it was also about helping at all times kind of grow the hobby. Well, one of the things that's happened as a byproduct is if you go out on the floor now, a bunch of the independent kind of fledgling businesses that are going, well, those are all folks that were on D-Class staff helping out at one point. So whether that's Skeletron, whether that's Longbow, whether that's Hidden Force, like a bunch of those also came out of the guys associated with Declassified. But back then, to hone in your question, sometimes it was simply putting out a call to who's available. We got invited to do, maybe about 10 years ago, a show up in Sacramento. And so me and one of the other guys, I was in San Diego at the time, the 2 of us literally then did the long drive from San Diego to Sacramento with everything that we could fit in the car together, and we went up and set up at that show to do the show. So really, especially when we do the localized stuff, it's whoever's nearby that we can call up and get a couple guys to show up and do that piece. So nothing that we display is owned by the organization. It's all on behalf and it's kind of on loan from individual benefactors that show up.
So you don't have any of that cool stuff, any of that print pro stuff, none of that?
Do I?
Do you?
I do, yeah.
I think I know the answer. What's the one? What's the grail of your own collection?
Oh, easily you know the answer, right? Like inside the original card art, the painting for Torpedo from the original package art. So that's mine.
I mean, raise your hand if you own an original burrito, right?
Yeah, Hector Dorito art is pretty hard.
Right, I was about to say, that's not Greedo from Star Wars, that's Hector Greedo.
Yes.
Right. And I totally lost my train of thought. But I mean, for the record, I've been involved with them for a long time. I own nothing. I'm good at collating and stapling. That's my role in the organization. I got the Torpedo that I bought at Toys R Us. That's what I got.
It's a sweet one.
It's the best one. I went through them all. But Sam, talk about your own collection. You have a bit of a cult following when we got you here.
Is that what we're gonna call it?
Sure.
Cult following.
I mean, it's a collection of 40-something dudes that see pictures of your basement online and their mouths hang open. So yeah, it's like, I think that's a cult.
Okay, I think that's right.
Right? Everybody, that works as a cult, right? That's an odd collection, right?
40 people drinking like Cold Mountain Dew. And,
Yeah. That dude in the back there, don't trust him, man. That guy?
Jason
Shady.
Yeah, no, I have a fairly large G.I. Joe collection. I started as an adult back in January of '98. Went to the stores with some friends. I just joined the service and boot camp was over. We needed to get off base. And they were like, oh, let's go on to Toys R Us. Do you want to go? And I was like, not really, but if it gets me out of here, like, that sounds great. And
They sold out new Code Red back then.
absolutely. And then they were searching for Star Wars stuff, and the 15th anniversary stuff was out. And I was like, holy cow! I grabbed that Torpedo off the shelf. And buddy Dave came up. He's like, "You gonna buy that?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're just gonna buy the one?" I was like, "Oh, dude, I have adult money now." I went and got the cart like as much as I could fit in the cart, man. I was like, I don't even know where I'm gonna put this, but this is awesome. And like 2 years later, I was at work one day, and my buddy Joe was working the desk. He's like, "Dude, you gotta check out this new website I just found out. It's brand new. You can buy stuff here." I'm like, "Well, like what kind of stuff?" He's like old stuff. I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna Transformers. It's called eBay." Oh yeah, back in the money order day. Anybody remember those?
Post office was the best, man.
Well, the worst part was I was overseas, so I had to go to the local post office, pop a money order in the mail back stateside, and then hope that it went through, and then wait for the mail to come all the way back. Always knowing that like my chance to file a complaint was long over before I ever got the item. But no, so I started off as a domestic collector, like just trying to like finish out the line. And then I had some buddies of mine that were like, "No, you gotta, check out foreign stuff." And it's like, no, that's crazy. And then my buddy, John, who owns Clutch Joe's, he's like, "Well, I'm getting out of my collection. I've got this whole box of really nice foreign stuff. I'll sell a whole box for like $400. So now I collect foreign. From every single country, and then other friends introduced the concept of pre-production, and so I ended up collecting pre-production. Yeah.
So see, everybody, the seed is the same for all. Everybody, even the people that run the booths, get this thing crawling through them to expand. It's a little messed up.
It's fun.
I like how you call these people who introduce you to ways to drop thousands of dollars friends.
I'm glad that you think it's only thousands.
Right? Thousands is kind of an endless term.
I mean, if you want that, you know.
There could be a lot of thousands. A lot of thousands.
It's a lot.
So if interest in pre-production items seems to be at a high,
Yeah.
why do you think that is?
I mean, one, pre-production stuff is cool, right? Like, I think no matter who you are, if you're into a hobby, right, you like collecting things, which I would assume everybody that's in this room is into, otherwise you probably wouldn't show up to something like this, then understanding how the thing that you have was developed and made, it makes it more interesting, right? Answering the questions like why, less in a grand metaphysical sense, and much more localized sense, is fun. Like, oh, why was this character designed that way? Why did that character get that accessory? What happened from the art to the figure where that those paint colors were dropped off? So it's inherently, I think, fascinating to most people. And then, especially the popularity, I think, grows. A lot of us have been collecting for a long time, and you finish up the collection, right? Whether you're a domestic collector only or a vintage collector only, you kind of get to the end of that, but you don't want to be done. Well, and then as we get older, we turns out have adult money. And then that's what opens up the pre-production door, I think, for a lot of folks. And then there's the idea of, I mean, everybody likes finding something that's unique and rare, or, that's kind of like, cool, oh, I'm one of the people, these are hard to get things. Well, that becomes a whole new level, and you go, well, I'm the only one of those things. Like, that's it, there's not enough of that. So I think it's got motivation from several factors. I would say, especially recently, the theory that I would agree with is a lot of Star Wars collectors have now come over to the G.I. Joe line, and they brought a lot of interest in that. That was always much bigger over there, and that's helped accelerate the interest on the side.
I think you're in a very interesting position, being a huge G.I. Joe collector, but also they were enlisted for quite some time. And given that you are not enlisted right now, I think a really salient question, really interesting to me, as a guy who served for quite a while and very recently, what bothers you about the G.I. Joe line? From an actual enlisted perspective.
Well, so to be clear, I gave up the enlisted title a decade ago. So, for those that don't know, I did 27 years in uniform, both enlisted and officer. I just, and I'm retiring. I mean, the entire structure, top down, is bothersome. But so it's only bothersome in a sense, and what I mean by that is if you care, right? So I never let G.I. Joe particularly bother me. I took it as its own thing. I mean, there's design elements that bother me. Me angering on certain designers for years to get rid of things like ankle holsters. That's a big one. Never enjoyed running around with an extra, 3-pound weight attached to one ankle. Turns out it's really bad for knees, hips, back, not to mention just heavy. So there's design features, but I take it also with a grain of salt because it's G.I. Joe, it's a fictional enterprise, and it doesn't need to be the real world. People have tried to make those toy lines, right? Remember BBI for a while? That was a thing that didn't exactly have the longevity that Joe. I don't need it to be realistic. I'm okay with that. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I thought you'd go to missile launchers on helmets, but
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go that route, we could do aliens, or we were having a discussion today about, the HAL, right? I've got laser artillery, which are
It's really normally the parabolic arc.
lasers, whatever. Those work together.
Artillery that ignores the curvature of the earth? Forget it, parabolic.
See, the Grand Slam was just preparing for lunar trips back in 1980.
Right.
That's ahead of the curve.
Yep.
So ahead, he ignored them.
Yes.
I don't know how much missiles on helmets is influenced by Sam being enlisted.
No, I'm just saying, I thought that might have been something.
Like that bothers all of us, I think. Right?
Yeah, you don't need to do it live to be bothering us.
How long did you run around with a missile on your helmet?
I mean, you know,
There's lots of fun.
Can't talk about that.
So we'll just assume a couple of weeks at basic and then you get some of those. All right, we'll get that moved. We'll get it moved.
Such a gap, all of a sudden we're in different seats.
Right.
All right, Jamie, just put your hand in front of the lens for a second.
Right.
Yeah, what's the, okay. What's the thing that you would say like classified, maybe, or declassified, done up, you know, where everybody just kind of looked and said, ooh, we didn't know that, how was this? You know, so basically, what's your biggest scoop?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. It's one I would have to give thought to. We started doing this 18 years ago. I think if I had anything that I would claim that we did well, it was convincing collectors to share stuff. That was the biggest wall to breach. There's a lot of stuff that existed back in the day in private collections, and here we were at, I mean, 18 years ago, I was, you know, in my late 20s, as a 20-something-year-old convincing guys that had, you know, stuff worth $5,000, $10,000 to, yeah,
Let us keep it in the booth. Nothing will happen to it, I promise.
and then,
I mean, it's got a lock with a little key on it.
Yeah,
it's
it's
fine. It's
only
fine.
safe. Thanks for reminding me, people. And then the struggle that was being, you know, part of the convention activities all night into the morning, and then realizing at, you know, 8 a.m. that the booth opens in 5 minutes, and we need to be downstairs now because we guaranteed that we would protect this stuff. So that was the biggest challenge for a while, the hurdle with the reluctance of people to let their stuff be seen and be taken out of their hands. It involves a lot of trust.
Right. I would concur with that. I would say the biggest scoop has been that, hey, if we share this stuff, everything's going to be okay. You know, I think that if you're looking for a single thing that was shared over the years, it's probably a multi-way tie for first. There's just lots of little things that people didn't know. You know, the big ideas still went through, right? Like all of them. But lots of little things, and it's more of a societal change than an information exchange, despite the fact that it started as an information exchange.
Absolutely.
Mark.
That's me.
Yeah. Did you have something? I'm sorry.
Right. We talked about this a little bit before you came out here. There's so much stuff coming out right now. And really, if you think about it, it wasn't that long ago when there was an active product, and we didn't know when we'd get active products yet. So I'd love you just thumbnail sketch on how you feel about the current Joe product. And also, there's so much good stuff being made by non-Astro companies, right? And not necessarily the Joe stuff, but stuff that works with the Joe line. So I'd love to hear your kind of thumbnail of the collective community right now.
So I think the community is in a good place, and what I mean by that is, I'll start with the end of your question, right? The fact that there is tons of compatible products made by members of the G.I. Joe collecting community is first and foremost a great sign, because what it says to me is that regardless of the brand health from Hasbro corporate, that even if G.I. Joe drops off today, like the opportunity to have new things to integrate with your Joes does not, like that does not go away, regardless of what Hasbro decides to do. Whether or not making your own product or licensing your product, which is a shift I don't think anyone would have predicted 10 years ago. I think it's good. As far as what's coming out, I mean, it's a lot. You were talking about that earlier, so I am, following on the earlier question, I am
100% completist. So if it's 3D and it's G.I. Joe, man, that's a lot from every country from 1982 to now. So as I was telling her earlier, like if production halted today, like I would not shed a tear, neither would my wallet or my shelf space that I seem to constantly have to run out of. But if it keeps going, cool as well. I think the biggest shift I would like to see though, and again, continue our earlier conversation, I don't know how much longer the official brand will go on without some investment in the spirit behind it. The toys that are coming out are great. Like, I look at the classified figures from a technical, like, execution standpoint, and they're awesome. But I don't know how many figures you can remake in the 80s, 90s, and just remake them. Like, at some point you have to do something, and again, talking about like the integration of characters, I don't know how you integrate characters when you don't bother to describe those characters to your target audience on package. I think that's going to be one of those things. Like, even without the comic being directly tied, you've got to have something to drive the meta kind of what your toy line is. And that's the one thing that I would like to see that happen.
I like that. I think it's especially true with it's a lot harder for kids to buy and want to play with toys. So if you want to introduce this brand to youth, you have to find other ways to do it as well. And I think they almost abandoned that with this brand. There's a lot of left. I love how people skybound sales have been for their massive bound comic collections. I like it when the Joe brand is, not brand, the Joe community gets to flex a little bit. You know, we're out here. There's lots of us. We're pretty much all adults. So we've all got paychecks that we would love to spend on good product. But it just doesn't feel like they're trying to find a way to invest that into youth. And without that, I always said it's a full sink that's slowly losing water, right? How to find some way to that.
Yeah, well, I think like, you got to hit on the media side too. Is the fact that whether or not, I'm still kind of caught up on comics, whether or not this guy does stuff is any good, I can't even offer an opinion. But the last thing, guys, movie that came out, my son was 11 at the time. If there's any kid prepped to be, into G.I. Joe, it's one of our kids, right? And I took him to the movie. He's never seen the old two movies, so he had no bias walking in. I tried not to say a single critical thing during the movie. And I walked out of the theater with him. I was like, "Oh, what did you think about that?" He was like, "Eh." Oh, this is not going to go well.
I think your son was generous. That's what you are now.
Yeah, that happened.
It's better than one you gave it.
It's definitely better.
Well, I lost.
No, I was not a fan.
But I think, but the point is whether or not you want to decide to acknowledge who your target audience is, if you hope to have brand longevity, is younger people need to be the target audience to a degree. And you can make some things that are compatible with younger audiences. Larry commented that with the old comic book. But you can't target one at the exclusion of the other miss.
Right.
So we do want to give you guys a chance to ask questions if you have any. So if anyone has a question, we'll point you out. Just run up real quick and get you on the microphone, and that way you can ask. But anyway. We have no old music to play you on that problem.
No problem. I was just curious how many of you did.
This weekend?
This weekend.
That would be a subject collected on or approached on a future episode.
Okay.
The weekend is not over.
All right.
It's only Saturday, I got Sunday, there's been some work done, and we're not there.
And all the deals happen on Sunday, right?
Right, yeah. Just tell them I'm coming, we're looking for tutors.
My question to follow that up is, have you ever done a showdown with Brian where you measure your heads versus his balls?
No, and in fact, I asked him earlier today, when of course Sam was referencing Brian Kaufman, who in our circles is legendary for the most monumental collection of crystal ball figures from 1987. I mean, dwarfs anything that I can potentially accumulate. He's got to have 300 or 400 of the damn things by now. I don't know why you'd want 300 or 400 of the damn things past the fact that, hey, this is a guy I can pick up for $4 and everybody's happy. But yeah, no, I'll take my heads over his balls any day. But again, it's all a matter of taste. So, I mean, I'm not here to tell you that you like heads better than balls. You like balls better.
We're not judging.
No, not at all.
27 years in uniform.
It's you went there. I didn't go there. You went there. Anybody else? Yeah. Hi, Bart.
So, pre-production now is all digital. So where are you getting guys go move the sculpts? I mean, it's not like, there's like 2 wax sculpture out there unless they're printing 3D models.
So it depends, right? And some of that comes down to the individual collectors who are after and what they're after, right? So yeah, like now that the art goes digital by and large, there's very little that's done to the so that eliminates that. But even getting access to the original design art from the artist is still unadorned with any like I don't remember the market term or the packaging type.
It changes, right? What they call days, what they call
Right, so he doesn't remember, I don't feel bad. Without all the logos and all the other type that's on there, that's cool to have, and you can print it out for yourself, whatever, right? So especially when art is obscured by what might almost might go package. And then on the 3D side, you're still going to have stuff that goes into that. You're going to still have test shots at the factory. You're still going to have final interior production samples, right, that can be picked up. You're still going to have
What is it, that shot more for prototype?
so prototype is a very broad term, right? So yes, first shots, test shots, FEPs, all of those are types of prototypes. They all count within the process from start to finish, and really that depends on what your interest is in that process. I'm not a big test shot guy, like it just doesn't hit my wicket, but final like production samples, especially if they're different from the final production version, absolutely, I chase after those. And that was probably half what I picked up this weekend. But then again, like if it's torpedo, I keep getting sent these to torpedo test shots. And if from classified line, I pick up multiples, right? It just turns into a thing. So there's still stuff there, is my point. And especially because when ideas change from design to final production, then you tend to then also have that pre-production material that does not get released, and that just builds up as the more stuff. So yes, there's less in the process that you can get, but even then, you can get access to whether it's sculpting terms or whatever, however it's done by guys. It's out there. It's just not. There's less opportunity.
We got time for one more, if anybody's got one more.
Did anybody give Bart a hug?
Bart?
Not yet.
Not yet. There again, the weekend is young. There we go. There we go. Anyways, so we wanted to give you guys a chance to get back out to the floor before things closed up for the day, if that's what you wanted to do. Before we do that, we wanted to give a few special shout outs. First off to Dennis, the gentleman over here in the go-kart with the machine gun. You notice that we've been aggressively offering everyone cake, and that's because Dennis brought it. And so yesterday, the doors opened at 6 p.m. By 6:05, there is a giant hummingbird cake on our desk because a couple weeks ago on the show, we didn't know what a hummingbird cake was, so he decided to show us. Dennis was brought into the Marine Corps as a baker, back when that was a possibility. He actually knew how to bake a hummingbird cake, dropped it on our desk. Take some on your way out. It's awesome. We made him eat the first piece, and when he didn't fall over, we decided it was safe to share with him. and that story is kind of true. So, so there's that. We also want to make sure we give a special shout out to Shay, who helped us out on very short notice with this panel. Morgan Lofting, who was supposed to be our original guest, and obviously due to health concerns had to cancel at the last minute. And of course to you guys, thanks so much for joining us. Take us out, Mark.
On another thrilling edition of
What's on your mind?
I can cry on demand, and it's not. That's very unfortunate.